about to install this oil cooler on my Holden VF. So this is the part number, and we're going to just pop it straight down here. Plenty of room straight in front of the radiator. Ideally I would like to put in the front, but I've already got coolers in there. So, done some pre-works here. This is some M8 stainless steel threaded rod. Can go down there. And then we've got these tubes which will sit in here, and that'll stop these tabs getting squashed and deforming. Now these threaded rods I've cut to just a smidge under 22 centimetres. And these aluminium tubes around 190 millimetres. I've got the radiator out. This is the new Mishimoto radiator that we're going to be putting in. So you sort of tell the difference, the thickness of the old one compared to the new one. Should offer a bit more cooling capacity, I reckon. This is a piece of angle iron I'm going to use as the bracket. So it's basically going to sit a bit like that. So I need to cut a few things out on it and see if we can get it to fit in there nicely. And give it a coat of black paint. So we're just doing a test fit on the oil cooler bracket, the oil cooler. So I'll pre-mark the holes where I want them to go in the frame. And then this one's going to go over here a bit. So I'm just going to have to move this hose out of the way. So it's going to be a little bit tricky, but we'll get there. But I think that fits pretty good. Well, this is the bracket we've made up here, all nicely painted. Turned out pretty good, really. I'll give you some measurements in case you want them. So it's roughly 55 centimetres long, and you can sort of see the hole spacing there. Some nice stainless bolts to put in there. So I've threaded the chassis here, cleaned it up. That should go in there nicely. There we go. And then we've got the other one over here. So that's sort of how it'll go, and we'll get the oil cooler on there. You might be wondering what this is. This is a speed controller for our CWA 100 down here, which supplies the water to the supercharger and the coolers on the front. Unfortunately the old box melted, so we had to replace it with this new one. Chuck a packet of this in there just in case there's any moisture ingress. And we've got a nice clear cover to go over the top. And that'll mount to the chassis rail down here. There we go, that's all bolted up. Didn't turn out too badly, I reckon. Could have just used a little bit more thread on these threaded rods, but maybe next time. So I've had to very carefully bend this AC hose out of the way. This nice big one right here. So we've got about a centimetre spare there now, so we might put some padding around that just in case. No, you don't want to damage this, otherwise you're going to leak all your refrigerant out. Now this is a replacement hose. It wasn't very cheap, so I don't really want to break it. Then you've just got to be mindful that it doesn't hit on the underside of the compressor over here. Now, probably a further note on this AC hose, I did notice it was on a pretty sharp sort of bend down here when this was coming straight out, and that was putting a fair bit of tension on that crimp down here. So that's probably why that's known failure point on these. So hopefully that bend should help it, well, not leak in the future, hopefully. These are all the bits and pieces for the oil cooler thermostat. Got this one from Improved Racing. This particular one's T6. So it references a specific temperature. And I've got these nice little adapters to go on top of the oil cooler. There's some of the parts there. That's sort of how it'll go together. Got 290 degrees there, and that's the thermostat temperature there. Don't forget to put this plug in if you're not going to use a sensor. Alright, let's get out there and put this on. Now we're just hanging out underneath the car here. We'll need to get this plate off here. So we'll get our 10mm socket, take that plate off. Should be about a litre of oil that'll come out of there, so I've got a container down here to catch it all. Cut 2 pieces of hose. This was Viton braided hose. You can see in there. Now when you cut this off, you want to make sure you don't get anything inside the hose, and probably also a good idea to flush the hose out before you actually install it. So wrap a bit of tape around here, and then you'll get your fitting here. And you'll just want to be careful you don't get any sort of stray strands coming up, otherwise that can make it a lot more difficult to get that on. So I'll put this on now. You want to keep going until that's flush in there. So you can see a bit better there now. So you can see the rubber hose is right up to the edge in there. You want to get this end, I've already put a few drops of oil on here, just along the edge there and onto the threads. That way when we put it on here it doesn't damage it. So put it in there, screw it up tight and put it on. So we've got the hoses attached here. They're on a slight bit of an angle, as you can see. This way they sort of line better with the engine mount once you get them in there. So make sure these are all nice and tight, and we'll get it up in there. That's it all installed. Get our 2 screws here, one there and one there, torqued up. Gonna get some heat shielding, put it on here, probably about 30 centimeters or so on each hose. That way when it comes out the other side, when it goes near the exhaust, it's not going to get too hot, even though we have got this wrapped. And we'll get it all tied in on that side. So we have the oil cooler installed now, all the hoses connected. So you can see they all run down here. We've got a nice little clamp on here to stop this hose going into the belt. We have a bit much length on this inside hose here, but it's not too bad. And then we'll put some heat shielding on here as it passes underneath the exhaust headers down the back, and then through the engine mount. Now these nice fittings have a bit of swivel on there, so if you need to adjust them or anything, they move. So let's get this radiator in there and the fans in, and get it all back together and see how it goes. I've also topped this up with oil and poured a bit of oil down these hoses so we don't have as much air in the system when we start it. So we have the radiator in. That looks pretty good. Was a bit tight on these getting them on, but they seem to fit. Now we need to get the cooling fans in there. So the radiator fan's in. Notice there's it's pretty close down here, but we have actually got a few millimeters space between this connector and this. So should be okay, but if you're making one of these, I'd suggest moving that bracket to maybe about 5 or 10 mils, yeah, that way, just to give it that bit of extra space, you know. But this will be fine. And it all looks relatively okay around this side. It's a little bit tight getting this fan in, but we got it in there eventually. Now we're about to put the coolant into the new radiator. Most important thing, make sure the bung on the bottom of this radiator is nice and tight. Don't over tighten it, of course, otherwise you'll end up snapping it off, and if you don't do it tight enough then it's going to come out. Let's get this coolant in here. And when we crank it over for the first time, we want to make sure that there's plenty of oil pressure. So I'll be watching this gauge here. Now that we've got the coolant topped off, we just want to make sure that there's no leaks. Let it idle and then take the cap off here and then top off the coolant. Make sure it's not hot, otherwise it'll start overflowing everywhere. So we can't see any leaks down here anywhere. All looks pretty good down here. So now that the engine's warmed up, we'll let that sit for a while, and then we'll recheck the radiator coolant just to make sure, and top it off if we need to. And that's how you install the oil cooler. Turned out pretty good, I think. We'll just have to do some runs and see if it performs.